My cousin was the family's golden boy, until I revealed I'm the one who signs his paychecks. Yeah, let that sink in for a second. You ever been to a family gathering where you can just feel it coming? Like everyone's there for a reason, and it's not just to eat potato salad and catch up. No, you're there to be compared, to be measured, to watch someone else get praised while you stand in the corner holding a paper plate, wondering why you even showed up. That was my life for years. And this is about the day I finally stopped being invisible. My name's Marcus. I'm 32 years old, and for most of my adult life, my family treated me like I was still figuring things out. You know, that one relative who hasn't quite found himself yet. The guy who dropped out of college, moved back home, and spent years working odd jobs while chasing some dream nobody understood. Meanwhile, my cousin Tyler, he was the star, the golden child, straight A student, business degree, internships at big name companies. Everything he touched turned to gold, or at least that's what my Aunt Linda made sure everyone believed. Tyler was 4 years younger than me, but you'd think he'd already cured cancer the way they talked about him. Every family dinner, every holiday, every damn reunion. It was the Tyler show, and I was just background noise. But here's the thing. While they were busy crowning Tyler, I was busy building something. Quietly. No Facebook posts, no updates, no announcements. Just me, grinding in silence. Because I learned a long time ago that my family didn't care about what I was doing. They only cared about what I looked like I was doing. And on this particular Saturday, at this particular family reunion, everything I'd been working toward for the past 7 years was about to come to light in the most satisfying way possible. Let me take you back to the beginning. 2. It started with a text from my mom. Real simple. Please come this time. Everyone wants to see you. I hadn't been to a family event in 4 years. Not because I'm some antisocial hermit or because I hold grudges. Well, okay. Maybe a little. But mostly because every time I showed up, I left feeling worse about myself than when I arrived. My Aunt Linda always had something to say. Usually something passive, aggressive like, "Oh, Marcus, still trying to find your path, huh?" Or, "It's never too late to go back to school. Tyler finished his master's last year. Yeah, thanks, Aunt Linda. Real helpful." But this time, something in my mom's voice made me say yes. Maybe it was curiosity. Maybe it was the fact that I finally had something to show for all those years of struggle. Or maybe I just wanted to see their faces when they realized they'd been underestimating me this whole time. So I said yes. The reunion was at my Uncle Greg's house. Same place as always. Huge circular driveway, 3 SUVs parked out front, and this weird iron eagle statue above the garage that made the place look like some kind of secret government facility. I pulled up in my Tesla. Nothing flashy, just a Model 3. But nobody even noticed. They were too busy swarming Tyler. Let me paint you a picture of Tyler. He's 28, blonde hair, big smile, the kind of guy who looks like he played lacrosse in college and still wears his varsity jacket to brunch. He's charming. He's confident. And on this particular day, he was riding high because he'd just landed a new job at a company called Helix Financial. Now, I'd heard of Helix. They'd been in the news recently. Big funding round, high valuation, lots of buzz. And they'd just been acquired by a larger holding company, a holding company that I worked for. But we'll get to that. 2. The second I walked through the door, Aunt Linda grabbed my arm like she'd been waiting for me. "Marcus! Oh my God, you actually came?" She pulled me into a hug that felt more like a wrestling move. "Come say hi to Tyler. He just got hired at Helix Financial. Can you believe it?" I smiled. "Wow, that's great." She leaned in closer, lowering her voice, but not nearly enough. "He's going to be a millionaire before he's 30. He's just so driven. So smart." And then she said it. The thing that made my jaw tighten. Unlike some people, She said it with a smile, like it was a joke. But it wasn't. I just nodded, kept smiling, and followed her to the backyard where Tyler was holding court. Tyler was in the middle of the patio, surrounded by uncles, cousins, and a few family friends who hung on his every word like he was delivering a TED Talk. It's pre-IPO, so yeah, there's some risk, he was saying, gesturing with his hands. But honestly, I'm not worried. We're scaling fast. The CEO knows my name. I've already been invited to a few executive Slack channels. Everyone nodded like they understood what any of that meant. I stood at the edge of the group, hands in my pockets, just watching. Then my grandma, bless her heart, turned to me. So Marcus, honey, what have you been up to these days? The whole backyard got quieter. Not silent, just quieter. Like everyone suddenly remembered I existed. I could have given my usual vague answer. Oh, work's been good, staying busy. But something in me decided today was going to be different. I took a sip of my drink, looked around at all those expectant faces, and said, not much. I just signed Tyler's paycheck last week. Silence, like actual silence. I've never heard so many people stop talking at the same time. Tyler blinked. Aunt Linda's smile froze. My Uncle Greg, who'd been mid-bite of a hot dog, just stood there with his mouth open. And my grandpa, 85 years old, half deaf, usually half asleep in his lawn chair, he sat up straight, leaned on his cane, and said loud enough for the whole neighborhood to hear, "Wait a damn minute. You signed his what?" Okay, let me back up, because what I just said wasn't a joke. It wasn't an exaggeration. It was the truth. But to understand how we got here, you need to know the whole story. The part where I wasn't some successful guy dropping one-liners at family reunions. The part where I was broke, desperate, and completely alone. Let's rewind 7 years, too. When I was 23 years old, I dropped out of college. My dad didn't talk to me for a month. My mom cried. Aunt Linda told everyone at church that I'd probably end up delivering pizzas or starting a band. I didn't care. I had an idea, and I wanted to build it. Not for clout. Not for attention. Just for me. The idea was simple: a platform that connected companies with specialized engineering talent. A hiring site, but smarter. More targeted. Better matching algorithms. I started building it in my parents' basement, teaching myself how to code using YouTube tutorials and online forums. I worked 16-hour days, barely slept, and lived off instant ramen and peanut butter sandwiches. I was also delivering groceries at night to pay off my student loans. My family didn't understand. They thought I was wasting my life. At family dinners, my mom would say things like, "Maybe you should just get a stable job for now. You can always do your little project on the side." My dad would grunt and stare at the TV. My sister Jessica, who was in med school at the time, would talk about her residency and how she didn't have time for side hustles. The unspoken message was always the same: Marcus is wasting his potential. Marcus needs to grow up. The worst part. It wasn't the struggle. It was the pity. I'll never forget the day of Jessica's med school graduation. I overheard my parents talking in the kitchen. My mom whispered, "I just hope he doesn't embarrass us in front of everyone." I didn't cry. I left before the ceremony even started. After that, I stopped showing up. I built in silence. The first version of my platform was terrible. It crashed constantly. The second version was barely functional. The third version started working. 18 months in, we got our first paying customer. A small company in Ohio. $99 a month. When I saw the Stripe notification, I cried. Not because I was happy, because I finally had proof I wasn't insane. But growth was slow. Money was tight. I didn't pay myself for 2 years. Then came the breaking point. Year 3, we lost our biggest client because of a bug. Our revenue tanked. My co-founder, Alex, had to leave because his mom got sick. I was alone again. I maxed out my last credit card just to keep the servers running. I picked up night shifts at a warehouse to make rent. One night, I sat in my car outside the warehouse, gripping the steering wheel, asking myself why I was still doing this. Why not just quit? Get a normal job? Stop the madness? But something in me, something small, stubborn, and angry, refused. Maybe it was pride. Maybe it was fear of going back to those family dinners with nothing to show. Maybe it was the memory of Jessica rolling her eyes when I told her about my idea. Whatever it was, it kept me going. 2 weeks later, I got a call from an angel investor named Robert. He wasn't flashy, just a practical guy who liked our idea. He gave us $50,000. That changed everything. From there, things moved fast. We signed new clients. Word spread. 2 years later, a venture capital firm made us an offer. We took it. I moved into an actual apartment. Alex came back. We hired a real team. Then came the acquisition. $13.5 million. No drama. Just clean terms. I walked away with a solid chunk. Not enough to retire forever, but enough to never have to answer to anyone again. I stayed on in a new role, VP of Strategic Acquisitions, which meant I got to help the company buy and integrate other startups. One of the first companies we acquired, Helix Financial, Tyler's new employer. I didn't even know he worked there until I saw his name on an employee roster a few months ago. I laughed when I saw it, but I didn't say anything until the reunion. Back at the reunion, the silence stretched on. Tyler let out a nervous laugh. Ah, right? Good one, Marcus. He looked around, hoping someone would join in. Nobody did. I smiled. Yeah. Small world, right? I didn't say anything else. I wanted to let it sit. Aunt Linda recovered first. She straightened up, smoothed her cardigan, and gave me that tight, dismissive smile she always used when she wanted to take control. Well, I'm sure that's a cute joke, Marcus. But let's not. It's not a joke, I said calmly. She blinked. I pulled out my phone, opened my email, and scrolled to a recent thread. Then I turned the screen toward her. It was an internal org chart. Clear as day. My name, VP of Strategic Acquisitions and Talent Infrastructure. Below that, a list of acquired companies. Helix Financial was right there, and 3 levels below my name, Tyler's. Aunt Linda's face went pale. Tyler stared at the screen like it was written in a foreign language. Grandpa leaned forward, squinting. Is that real? I nodded. Yeah, Grandpa. It's real. He sat back, let out a low whistle, and said, Well, I'll be damned. Here's the thing. I didn't put Tyler's name on the chart. I didn't hire him. I didn't even know he applied to Helix. But technically, yeah, I could approve his bonuses. I could review his performance. I could move his entire team to a different project if I wanted to. I had authority over him. And everyone in that backyard knew it now. Aunt Linda tried to recover. Well, that's... Look, Tyler's worked very hard to get where he is. You don't just... I'm not saying he didn't. I interrupted. I'm just saying he works for a company that I help run, that's all. Tyler finally spoke up. His voice was quieter now. I didn't know you worked there. I know, I said. I keep a low profile. He nodded slowly. That's actually really cool, man. Congrats. It wasn't sarcastic. He actually meant it. And for a second, I felt bad. Not because I'd embarrassed him, but because this whole situation could have been avoided if my family had just treated me like a person instead of a cautionary tale. 2. The rest of the reunion was awkward. People suddenly wanted to talk to me. Uncles asked about my job. Cousins wanted to know how I made it. Even Aunt Linda tried to act like she'd always believed in me. I kept my answers short, polite, but distant, because here's the truth, I didn't do this for them. I did it for me. And, yeah, it felt good to finally be seen. But it also felt hollow. Because the validation I'd been chasing for years, it didn't matter anymore. I didn't need them to believe in me. I already believed in myself. That night, I drove to the old high school field where I used to eat lunch alone after I quit the soccer team. I sat on the bleachers, staring out at the empty field, thinking about every comment, every eye roll, every condescending smile that had pushed me to this point. And I realized something. This wasn't about revenge. It was about reclaiming my story. For years, my family had written the narrative. Marcus the dropout, Marcus the failure, Marcus the guy who couldn't get it together. But I'd rewritten it, not with words, with action. And now, they had to read the new version. A few days later, my mom called. "Can we talk?" she asked. I said yes. We met at a coffee shop. She didn't apologize right away. She just asked questions. Real questions. About the company. About the early years. About the nights I'd spent alone, wondering if I'd made a mistake. I told her about the Raymond, the tears, the warehouse shifts, the silence. She didn't say much. Just listened. And I think that hurt her more than anything I could have said. She cried. I almost did too. Jessica sent me an email a week later. Long. Formal. Apologetic. She said she admired me, that she was proud, that she should have said it sooner. I didn't respond right away. Not because I was angry, but because I wasn't sure I believed her yet. 2. Tyler never reached out directly. But I heard through the grapevine that he'd been keeping his head down at work, showing up earlier, asking better questions. In his own way, he was trying, and I respected that. Aunt Linda went quiet on Facebook. No more brag posts. No more humble brags about Tyler. Just pictures of her garden and passive-aggressive quotes about real success being silent. I smiled every time I saw one. 2. But here's the thing. This story, it doesn't end with me riding off into the sunset, vindicated and victorious. Because a month after the reunion, something happened that I didn't expect. Something that shifted the entire family dynamic. And this time, it wasn't in my favor. It started with a voicemail from my dad. I was on a flight back from Chicago, running on 2 hours of sleep when I saw the notification. Missed call. Dad. Voicemail 1 minute, 23 seconds. We didn't talk much, even after everything. Our relationship existed in this weird limbo where we were polite but distant. I played the message while waiting at baggage claim. His voice was soft. Too soft. Hey, Marcus. Listen, something's come up. Nothing urgent, don't worry. But your grandfather's been asking about you. Wants to see you. I think it's important. He's not saying much, but when he asks twice, I listen. Call me. My stomach tightened. Grandpa had always been sharp, but his health wasn't what it used to be. He still lived alone, refused to leave the house he'd built with his own hands. But lately, my mom had been hinting that he was slowing down. I called back the next morning. Marcus. He answered, his voice rough but steady. You done flying around in airplanes yet? I laughed. Just landed yesterday. What's up? There was a pause. Come over tomorrow if you can. There's something I need to show you. 2. Grandpa's house hadn't changed. Same fading blue paint on the porch railing. Same wind chimes clinking softly in the breeze. Same smell of coffee and cedar and something faintly medicinal that clings to old houses. He was waiting for me on the porch, wearing his usual suspenders and a flat cap that made him look like he'd stepped out of a 1950s baseball game. You're late, he said, even though I was 5 minutes early. Good to see you, too, Grandpa. He just waved me inside. He led me to his study, a room cluttered with old tools, yellowed maps, stacks of newspaper clippings, and a locked file cabinet that hadn't been opened in decades. He sat down slowly in his worn leather chair and gestured to the seat across from him. Then he unlocked the cabinet, pulled out a manila folder, and slid it across the desk. Inside were old documents, property deeds, tax filings, letters, and a faded photo of a lake house I remembered from childhood. I scanned the first page, confused. I don't understand, I said. What is this? That, Grandpa said slowly, is everything the family doesn't know about. I looked up. He leaned back, resting both hands on his cane. That lake house. It's been in the family since the 70s. Your grandma and I bought it before any of your uncles got married. I never told anyone it was under my name only. Figured it'd be less of a fight when I passed. I kept reading, property deeds, signed, dated. My name on several of them, dated within the last year. You transferred these to me. He nodded. Started the process months ago. Made it official last week. Why me? He looked at me hard, like he was trying to see through my skin. Because you showed me something they didn't. Grit. You earned everything you've got. The rest of them, your dad, Linda, Jessica, they think success is owed to them because they checked the right boxes. Good grades, good schools, right job titles. He leaned forward. But you built. And then you showed grace. You didn't rub it in their faces, even when you had every right to. I didn't know what to say. He kept going. They think I'm leaving everything to your dad. Linda thinks Tyler's getting a share. But the truth is, I've watched how they treat people when they think they're above them. And I've watched how you stayed humble when you didn't have to. He tapped the file cabinet. You're the executor now. When I pass, it's your call what happens next. My heart started racing. Does anyone else know? He grinned. Nope, that's the fun part. 2. I left Grandpa's house feeling like I'd been handed a loaded weapon and told to use it wisely. I didn't ask for this. Didn't want it, at first. But the more I thought about it, about the lake house, the accounts, the forgotten shares in an old family business that still generated modest but steady income, the more I realized what I'd been given. Leverage. And suddenly, memories started flooding back. Like the time Jessica laughed in my face when I asked her to look over a contract in the early days of my startup. I'm a doctor, not a magician, she'd said. Or the time Aunt Linda told my mom, behind my back, that I was a lost cause and they should prepare for when I inevitably came crawling back. Or the time Tyler joked at a wedding that some people think startups are easy money, but they don't understand the real world. I remembered all of it, and now I held the strings. Over the next few weeks, I started planning, not out of malice, not out of revenge, but because I wanted clarity, justice, and maybe, a little bit of spectacle. First, I contacted my lawyer, had him review every document Grandpa gave me. We validated the transfers, filed the silent paperwork to finalize a few outstanding deeds, and set up safeguards. Then I looked into the old business Grandpa mentioned, a company called Pinecrest Utility LLC. The family had forgotten about it after selling most of it off in the late 2000s. But someone had kept a minority stake. That someone was Grandpa, and now that 8% stake was mine. And that 8%, it had a new buyer knocking. $300,000. I signed the paperwork. Suddenly, I had liquid cash, legal ownership over 3 plots of land, 1 cabin, and a family trust account nobody even knew existed. The irony. The whole family assumed Grandpa was getting forgetful. That he needed help managing his affairs. They were already circling like vultures, waiting for him to pass so they could divide up the scraps. They had no idea the will had already changed. They had no idea I was the executor. They had no idea I now held the keys to everything. 2. I waited until Thanksgiving. This time, dinner was at Aunt Linda's house. Same circus. Roast turkey, polite jabs, forced laughter. Tyler was quieter than usual. Kept his head down. I noticed him glancing at me now and then, like he wasn't sure if he was supposed to be mad or impressed. Jessica brought her new boyfriend, a surgeon. She introduced him 3 times, like we hadn't heard her the first 2. Aunt Linda was in full hostess mode. This turkey is from that specialty farm near the vineyard, she announced. Nothing frozen here. I smiled, said nothing. Let her talk. Let them all talk. Then, when dessert was being served, I clinked my glass. Hey everyone, I said, standing up. Can I just have 5 minutes? They all turned. Even Grandpa looked up from his pumpkin pie. I pulled out a small black folder and set it carefully on the table. "This," I said, "is the updated deed to the lake house." Aunt Linda blinked. "The lake house. It's in my name now," I said quietly. "Grandpa transferred it last month, along with a few other assets." You could hear the blood drain from their faces. Jessica frowned. "What are you talking about?" I opened the folder, pulled out the notarized document, turned it around so everyone could see. Aunt Linda went rigid. That has to be a mistake. That property belongs to the family. To Is." Grandpa cleared his throat. "I am the family," he said, "and I made my choice." I let that sit for a moment. Then I continued. "I'm not doing anything with it right now, but I will be restructuring a few things, which means if anyone had plans to use the house next summer without asking, you might want to rethink that." Jessica's boyfriend started making excuses to leave. Tyler looked like he'd swallowed a spoon. Aunt Linda stood up abruptly. "This is insane. This is manipulation. You convinced an old man to sign over our family's property." "No," Grandpa said firmly. "I gave it to someone who earned it, and I also made him executor. When I pass, Marcus gets final say on everything." The silence that followed wasn't like the reunion silence. This one was heavy, ugly, final. But I wasn't done, because this wasn't just about property or money. This was about truth. And it was time to show them what truth looked like when it walked into the room carrying a folder and a plan. I reached into my bag and pulled out one more envelope. I placed it on the table in front of Aunt Linda. Her name was printed on the front. Inside was something she hadn't seen coming. Something she should have remembered. A mistake she made years ago. And I had the receipts. Linda's hands trembled as she pulled the paper from the envelope. She unfolded it carefully, like she knew she was holding something dangerous. Her eyes scanned the page. Her breathing quickened. By the time she reached the signature at the bottom, her face had gone completely blank. "Where did you get this?" she finally said, clutching the paper a little too tightly. "It was in one of Grandpa's old files," I said calmly, "with the rest of the trust documents. You went through his private things." She snapped, her voice rising. "You manipulated him. You must have. He would never give you this." "Stop," Grandpa said quietly, but firmly. "He didn't manipulate anything. I gave it to him." The room fell silent again. Victoria leaned over, trying to see the document in Linda's hands. "What is it?" she asked. I turned slowly, almost dramatically. "A promissory note," I said, "signed by Aunt Linda 25 years ago, for a 40,000 loan that Grandpa gave her and Uncle Ron when they wanted to start that landscaping business. The one that failed after a year." Linda's eyes went wide. "He said it was a gift. We were family. He said not to worry about it." Grandpa shook his head. "I said don't worry about paying it yet. I never forgave that debt. I just waited to see if you'd bring it up. You never did." Linda was stammering now. "That was 20 years ago. It's irrelevant now. Any lawyer would say the statute of limitations." "It's not about suing you," I said, folding my hands in my lap. "It's about family double standards. You've spent decades acting like everyone else is beneath you, bragging about your money, making snide comments about other people's jobs and choices. My mom, my dad, me. And the whole time, you never once acknowledged the help you got to get started." Jessica spoke up carefully. "Okay, but that was a long time ago, Marcus. Why bring this up now?" "Because," I said, turning my gaze around the table, "this family has spent years rewarding arrogance and punishing humility. I watched all of you treat me like I was broken just because I didn't follow the same path you did. You mocked me for building something from scratch. You belittled me when I was at my lowest. You ignored me unless you needed something to gossip about." I stopped, let the tension build. And now I'm the one holding the keys to the property, to the accounts, to this family's legacy. Linda stood up. You're just doing this for revenge. You always were jealous of Tyler. Of Jessica. I tilted my head. You keep saying that word. Jealous. But let's be honest. What exactly do you think I'm jealous of? No one answered. So I kept going. Jessica's success. She earned that. I respect her. Even if she's been cold sometimes, at least she works for what she has. Jessica tensed but didn't interrupt. Tyler. I was never jealous of him, but you made sure the whole family thought I should be. Every dinner. Every party. You made him the star. And you made me the cautionary tale. You built a narrative and fed it until it became gospel. Well, guess what? The story changed. Grandpa chuckled softly. I turned back to Linda. You owe $40,000. I don't need the money. But I do want a statement. A signed letter acknowledging the loan, the terms, and that you misrepresented it as a gift to avoid repayment. She scoffed. You're joking. I pulled another sheet from the folder. I've drafted it for you. You can't make me sign that. No, I said. But if you don't, I'll file it with Grandpa's full estate records. And under the terms of the updated trust, that gives me the legal right to bar you from any inheritance distribution for failure to acknowledge debts owed to the trust originator. Linda started to speak. But no sound came out. Tyler looked like he was watching a car crash in real time. Jessica sat very still, her eyes locked on me. Not angry anymore. Curious. For once, actually listening. I turned to the whole table. This isn't about punishing anyone. It's about accountability. For years, I was treated like a failure. I was cut out of birthday parties, mocked at reunions, criticized for not following the same timeline as everyone else. And now that I'm successful, you want me to pretend none of that happened. I shook my head. I won't. I'm not asking for an apology. I'm asking for honesty. I looked each of them in the eye. So here's how this is going to work. 1, if you want access to the lake house, you go through me. 2, I'm restructuring the family trust rules to limit access to discretionary funds and create contribution-based equity for future use of any shared properties. 3, no more backdoor deals. No more, she said. I'm setting up quarterly reporting for any assets pulled. Full transparency. I looked at Jessica. You're a doctor. You understand systems. If you want to help me manage this as co-executor, I'd welcome it. Not as a favor, as an act of accountability. She gave a small nod. I'd be okay with that. 4. Tyler. He looked up, startled. You don't owe me anything, but we're at the same company now. If you ever want to talk about your role, your growth, how to actually succeed in the startup world, my door's open. But I'm not protecting you. If you slack off, you're gone like anyone else. Earn your place. He nodded slowly. Grateful. I turned back to Linda. 5. You have until the end of the weekend to sign that letter, or your name comes off the list. She stared at me. Then slowly, she sat back down. She didn't say another word for the rest of the night. The fallout wasn't immediate. It trickled in over the next few weeks. Apologies. Texts from Jessica. From my mom. Even from cousins I hadn't talked to in years. Everyone suddenly thoughtful. Interested in my story. Curious about what I'd been through. I responded politely, but not warmly. Some bridges, once burned, don't need rebuilding. Tyler started showing up to work earlier. I saw it in his Slack activity. Saw him asking better questions. In his own way, he was trying to change. And I respected that. A month later, Jessica invited me to a hospital benefit where she was speaking. I went. She mentioned me in her speech. Called me my brilliant brother who built something from nothing when no one believed in him. It wasn't performative. It was real. That night, we talked. Not about the past. About the future. We weren't best friends, but we were finally moving in the same direction. Linda signed the letter. Eventually. But she hasn't spoken to me since, and I'm fine with that. She doesn't control the story anymore. 2. As for me, I still run my division at the company. I still invest in small startups. I still live in the same apartment, still drive the same Tesla. But now I spend weekends at the lake house, fixing it up, planting trees, building a fire pit out back, installing a new dock. It's peaceful there. No tension, no comparisons, no noise. Just me, the water, and the crackling of the fire. Because here's what I learned. It's not about the money. It never was. It's about knowing who you are when no one's cheering for you, and knowing who they are when the cheering stops. That's the real inheritance. Thanks for listening. If you haven't subscribed yet, hit that button and turn on notifications so you don't miss more real stories like this. Because, trust me, this family's got more chapters to write. And I'm just getting started.